Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the weekly live today. Today's Monday. I don't typically do these on Monday, so hopefully you are wide awake at 11:30 and ready to get your week started. I sure am. I have Hunter Walsh with me today. Thank you so much for Hunter for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Lauren. It's been a while since I did one of these and more excited than normal. So thanks for having me on the show.
Heck yeah. So, real quick, if you do not know Hunter, if you're local to the 757 area, you definitely know Hunter. But for those of you who are not, I'm going to introduce him real quick. So Hunter is a must-meet leader in Hampton Roads. He has been super involved in the entrepreneurial, that's a challenging word apparently for me today on Monday, ecosystem. And so he's a former director of Startup Studios 757. He played a pivotal role in supporting over 180 startups, helping them secure more than 30 million in capital and creating hundreds of jobs. When I was digging into Hunter and his expertise, I found this amazing quote that I had to share. So he was recognized as one of the quote 100 people to meet in 2024 by Virginia Business for being a quote leader and shining star or leader and shining a light on the underserved people or helping startups get ahead. These impactful Virginians are changing the Commonwealth for the better. Stumbled over that one, but wonderful quote that is in Hunter's description for the live post. So, beyond his professional endeavors, he's an avid foodie, traveler, and outdoor enthusiast. So, welcome to the show, Hunter. Sorry I stumbled over your quote there.
No worries. It's always uncomfortable listening to people talk about you when you're a semi-private person like myself. But yes, you were able to dig up that, and super excited and honored to be recognized on that list last year. And credit to Virginia Business Magazine for putting together that list and so many other awards that recognize amazing and dynamic leaders all across the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yeah. So I met Hunter from, I think it was a Thrive conference. So if you're not familiar with that, it is what they do in coastal Virginia. They have a young professionals conference every year where a lot of young professionals meet up. And so I met Hunter through that organization and then found out about his work with 757 Startup Studios. And since then, Hunter has gone off on his own. So I figured before we really start getting into it, Hunter, would you mind just kind of giving us a high level overview of what you did there and what you're working on now?
Yeah, thanks so much, Lauren. That 757 Startup Studios was kind of the vision and brainchild, if you will, of Monique Adams, who started 757 Angels, and Evans McMillian, the founding director of 757 Accelerate. And for those that aren't familiar with either of those organizations, 757 Angels is a angel group. Think like Shark Tank, hyper locus to the Hampton Roads area, and only investing in startups that are making a significant impact in Virginia. They started in 2015, hit the ground running, and that group's deployed over $107 million in capital to startups making a significant impact in Virginia since launch. So absolutely incredible work. They realized that was going well, but they wanted to open up the deal flow and be able to reach entrepreneurs at a little bit earlier stage that maybe weren't quite ready to raise a round of funding, but had really encouraging traction for their stage. So they started 757 Accelerate in 2018 for, at the time, startups that have an idea, maybe even those initial customers that are looking to really accelerate, add fuel to the growth of their startup. So you had those two pieces, but then there are all these people that just like had an idea, a dream, a napkin sketch. And at the time, there were sort of pockets of different resources, but not sort of a centralized aggregation of all of the different facets that that early stage entrepreneur needed to help validate and scale their idea. So many long talks in the early 2020s area led to 757 Startup Studios being the first tenant to move into the Assembly Innovation Campus in the heart of downtown Norfolk. And at the time, studios really served two main purposes. So it was the physical space that brought together all of the staff at what we now call 757 CoLab, mentors, all of the different partners within that organization that make the magic happen, while also being a selective incubator to early stage growth minded founders. So that was an incredible, as with anything, I think all entrepreneurs, all innovators love to try to make the impossible somewhat possible. And it looked really great on paper. And flash forward to over 4 years since launch, serving over 200 entrepreneurs. I think the metrics and impact speak for themselves. I was there for almost 4 years, and kind of as my grandparents, who both were married for over 60 years, when somebody asked them, "How long have you been married?" and they were quickly, whichever was the most alert at that particular day, would, in a quick-witted way, fire back, "Well, it's X amount of calendar years, but some count more than one." And as with any entrepreneur in the early days, rolling up your sleeve, wearing a lot of hats, that it was so much more than just a job. And in order to do it to the level that it needed to be, required a lot. And I realized late last year that I probably wasn't able to give it what it needed, and was no longer kind of the best person to lead that organization into the next evolution and wave of CoLab 2.0. So I stepped away from that at the end of February this year. Now I'm out on my own doing some consulting fractional work for startups, scaling small businesses, and nonprofits, supporting those groups of people, helping them in a wide range of things, from marketing to strategy to business development, anything in between, kind of the cliche, a Swiss Army knife, helping people do a lot, which tracks with my professional background and education thus far.
Yeah. It's one thing to work with startups and other people that are doing it, but when did you officially say, "Okay, I am launching my own thing?" When was that? What month?
So I had been talking about it internally for probably November of last
Okay.
year, so November 24, but officially launched and got my LLC and registered with the state, and got your business license March 1 of this year. So we're 3 months in, maybe a little bit more than that, and enjoying every second of it.
Oh, yeah. It's such a huge transition. I speak from experience being able to go from a full-time job that you committed every day to, and 9 to 5 or 40 hours or probably more in your case, to then having to make your own schedule and trying to, as we were talking about before the show, figure out, like, what do I actually do today? How do I organize what I'm supposed to do? Because it's a different world.
You're always in life, I feel like, trading one set of problems in for another, and oftentimes it's just what are you best equipped to try to work through and make positive progress towards at this moment and stage in life. And certainly, in hindsight, maybe not the best decision with some of the things that are happening currently in our economy and things like that, but like, you have to put that in the rearview mirror, and continue to move in a positive direction intentionally each and every day.
Yeah. So you are primarily now consulting startups to help them with what?
So, if kind of my background is, I've done a little bit of a lot of different things. So kind of the hypothesis, if you will, and when I was trying to look for more traditional full-time roles, I wasn't really finding anything in the Hampton Roads market that checked enough of the boxes for what I was looking for. So kind of always thinking like an entrepreneur, and have that entrepreneurial bug. If I can't find it, like, let me try to go out and create a smaller version, an MVP, if you will, to show if there's even viability there. So as a small business owner, it's difficult while you're supposed to have all these projections of where you're going to be at the end of a quarter, at the end of the year. Like, oftentimes that's very soon after those plans were created, they're outdated and need to be revisited. So really being able to just create and connect with individuals and get them to buy into the type of person that you are, and being able to help them in a wide variety of projects as their needs change, instead of having to go out and then find a new person to help them with X or Y. They're like, hey, like, so sort of a generalist of
Mhm.
sorts, which for a long time I associated that and had like a negative connotation for whatever reason. Cause I feel like in today's world, like specialization, and somebody wants,
Mm.
a front end developer or somebody that specializes just in search engine optimization and that their sole role is just on that. But what I found, at least thus far, with many of the small nonprofits in the area and small businesses, that they have a need, but they more than likely aren't in a position to dedicate a full time staff member to own solely that particular part in a much broader scheme. So that's been super fun, being able to really go deep and help clients from early stage, kind of just talking and to creating plans, actually executing them, seeing them through, and then iterating. Whereas before, because I was wearing so many different hats, I unfortunately didn't have the capacity to really roll up my sleeves and spend as much time with the startups in particular as perhaps I wanted to. So that's been very fun now, and being able to sharpen and re-engage different parts of my brain and muscles that perhaps weren't as active as I would have liked them to be over the past 4 years or so.
You already have a leg up doing what you do for startups because it helps you directly with what you're doing as an entrepreneur. So you're helping startups, but all of the things that you know from all of your previous experiences, you can carry into what you're doing. So it's almost setting you up for super success with what you're doing. So I'm really glad that you decided to make that jump. That's awesome. Were you nervous?
Thanks. Absolutely. I mean, as a recovering entrepreneur, I feel like that no two ventures are the same. And I think
Mhm.
that not my first necessarily rodeo in that space. So I think a lot of it is just, I think it's easy, and when people talk about entrepreneurs or innovation or startups, etc., that their mind naturally is going to go more towards the business aspect of that, obviously, like that, and it should be like that's the primary focus. But you don't spend 100% of your time wearing the hat on your business. You have a personal life. You need to sleep. You need to do other things. So it's very much, it's not a unilateral decision. It's something that you really need to engage your friends, key champions, mentors, etc., to actually understand, if you're going to do it, understand the sacrifice that that's going to take. What are your objectives and outcomes, and like reverse engineering that process? Because I think oftentimes there are many great ideas that should just stay great ideas, and what looks great on paper, awesome, but like, whether it's, I don't have the 3,000 hours to devote to building this prototype, or I don't have $2 million hanging out in a bank account to be able to really get everything I need to start this endeavor. So yes, lots of nerves and angst, and I think that with this, have so much respect for many of the entrepreneurs that are dealing with super technical, novel solutions and products there. This is pretty straightforward. It's not doing anything that's particularly unique in any way, shape, or form. Perhaps how it's packaged, or that might be somewhat unique, but it definitely is easier when you're starting, running super lean, taking the advice that I
Yeah.
preached to so many people for so long, like no website, no anything, purely word of mouth. And I think just like seeing, is there viability? Are there enough people that resonate with kind of the solution set, or do they have enough of a pain point and problem to engage somebody like me? And if it's not me, like how can I still leverage my network to help them So love just chatting with folks, hearing what cool ideas are happening in the marketplace. A lot has changed in the 4 years when I was at CoLab, and I think you don't necessarily realize when you're head down, so hyper focused on kind of the mission and community that you're building. You forget that like there's a whole world out there that's still doing its thing. So I think that's been one of the pleasant surprises, just being able to reconnect with folks that I haven't had an opportunity to have coffees and catch up with, and hearing what cool things are happening, and also like what are their pain points, that how business is being done nowadays, fairly vastly different than it was several years ago before
Yeah.
AI and so many of these things that are now sort of almost non-negotiables to run a business now. That role, and it's just a very it's a bumpy time to be an entrepreneur. Lots of uncertainties, and certainly I think the business community isn't particularly comfortable with a lot of uncertainty,
Mhm.
relatively speaking. So it's a fun time to be in entrepreneurship. It's a fun time to see what Hampton Roads is doing. And all you can do is control what you can control and put it into perspective. And I think figure out with the time that you're choosing to devote to your business each day, what's going to move the most boulders and continue to help you making positive progress and get closer to hitting some of the key performance metrics and indicators that you're holding yourself accountable to.
Yeah. You said it's a fun time being an entrepreneur, and I would disagree. I would say, yes, it is fun to an extent, you working for yourself or working with a partner, but the uncertainty, that's really tough for some people. It's fun, but the stress level, just being able to, depending on what industry you're in, right? Sometimes some people are way more affected by the tariffs directly than others. You've got AI. Oh, is that going to replace what we do? I mean, that's a conversation that we've had at our company, is what is the future looking like? And I think a lot of people are really nervous about that. And so that's why you said people kind of like that certainty right now. So how can you still make this fun whenever it is just such a scary time?
I would say that that's an attitude and a mindset shift that like
Yeah.
you have 100% control over. And I would like to think that it wouldn't necessarily be a surprise that with entrepreneurship comes lots of uncertainties. I think
Mhm.
for a while,
Yeah.
depending upon what industry you're in, that we had an uncanny, unprecedented time of very quick success, and a
Mhm.
lot of different sort of businesses, lifestyle businesses that happened because of the pandemic, et cetera, that kind of took off. I don't want to say by accident, but I think that now you're starting to get back to kind of historically. Um, Obviously, there are no guarantees of anything, but at least in today's market, I would rather be in 100% control of my solopreneur
Yeah.
business than being at the mercy of things beyond my control. So going back to like that is a problem set that like I can only get mad at myself
Mhm.
instead of circumstances and things that I have no control over, but still have a pretty significant impact on me, my family, and some of the communities that are counting on the services being provided, your customers, etc. there.
That's a really good point, is you don't know, because there is talk about AI and what it's going to replace, who it's going to replace, what company is going to adopt it and when. And so some people just don't really think about that, don't really spend the time thinking about it, but that is a great point. There is definitely a level of uncertainty whenever it comes to even working for somebody. So pick your problems, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to have fear or any of a similar type of emotion consume you, and I
Yeah.
think that like you have to use that as motivation and like hunger, and like keep fear in your front pocket, like get comfortable with it because it's not going away. And I think the second that you start to get complacent with where you are, or don't continue to push yourself, or aren't doing the business development or outreach or tackling the tough problems that you need, it's only a matter of time before you start to have some adverse impacts from some of those decisions or indecisions in that particular example.
Yeah. And I feel like this question's a little bit more relevant to you right now because you're 3 months into your journey. You said keep fear in your back pocket. It's not going to go away. And that is something that I have personally made the mistake of a lot in my business is thinking, oh, well, not necessarily the grass is greener, right? But oh, in a few months, once this problem is solved, then I won't be afraid anymore or I won't be so anxious. And I think really all of those emotions are rooted in fear. And so personally, I try and look at it like a box, and you put fear in a box and you close the lid on the box and you shove it away. Maybe that's unhealthy. Maybe that's not appropriately dealing with your emotions. I'm not too sure. But what do you mean by that? How can you actually walk that out?
Well, I think it's obviously everybody works differently, and what works for you or me might not work for folks listening to this right now. So I think you have to understand you and have that uncomfortable conversation of like looking at yourself in the mirror, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and like not use that as an excuse preventing you from reaching your goal. I think that I'll maybe say it a different way in terms of I feel like entrepreneurs and many leaders and professionals put so much pressure on themselves to be perfect all the time, and I think that like normalizing failure and giving yourself permission to fail is going to lead to some of the greatest leaps in terms of your professional or leadership growth in life. And I fail every single day. It might not be an epic screw up that I can't come back from, but I think if you're not making mistakes, if you're not failing, or you aren't actually making some of the tough decisions or speaking up in meetings because of fear of X or Y, I would challenge you perhaps in a appropriate manner through whatever communication styles you feel most comfortable in communicating that, whether it's a private conversation, etc., giving yourself the ability to speak up and share your thoughts and reasons of what you're feeling. That if you think, and if you're in this silo, always seeking out things and opinions that affirm your beliefs, that's not fair to anyone. It's not fair to your team. It's not fair to your clients. It's not fair to the universe there. So I think you need that diversity in thought and perspective, kind of looking at any opportunity from a 360-degree lens of like, where are my gaps? What am I missing there? And like, I want dissenting opinions and thought provoking questions because number one, that shows that you care. And even when you're talking with clients, etc., like, hey, we have some crazy ideas that we've never tried before. Like, these are our quick takes. Like, it's going to work really well if this happens, it's going to completely bomb if this happens. Like, any of that sound appealing to you? I think if you come from a place of positive inquiry and like
Mhm.
curiosity, oftentimes we get in our own heads and can talk ourselves into or out of everything, and having a one-way conversation with yourself. So I think that like just having and conversing, whether it's asynchronously or live in real person, if you're consistent enough in that behavior, will eventually have it so you're not even really thinking about fear and are rewiring your brain and how you approach situations and things. So you're having that growth mindset and can take any outcome and learn from that, whether it's lessons learned and these 99 things went well. This is the one thing where we have an opportunity for improvement. Just putting things into perspective and realize that like you can't be great at everything. And
Yeah.
like everybody has those superpowers where like they are uniquely strong for you. Great, awesome. Find ways to just exploit those, but also be mindful and cognizant of like, I'm really weak in these areas. So you know those blind spots and can surround yourself or proactively find people to help grow or work through that. So you can just have as much of the right information available to you to act, to improve, to use it however you want.
Personality tests really were just screaming whenever you were talking. Being able to do that at the start of any significant role or pretty much anything you do in business, having a personality test and knowing who works well with you is always really, really beneficial, especially as a founder. Because if you are a solopreneur and you are just bouncing ideas off of yourself, it's really easy to get into that feedback loop, like you were saying. But finding a personality that kind of complements yours, whether it's a business partner, one of your other executives, somebody to just kind of rattle ideas off of, it really can help to just make you feel a little bit better about whatever situation might be really consuming you at that time.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Do you advise, did you do personality tests when you were working with startups at all?
That wasn't a part of like our formal process. I've taken many different personality tests, and I think just like with anything, whether it's a report, etc., if you don't understand the numbers or the output and the relationship between that, it's just more information that you really can't act on.
Yep.
And so I think that a lot of times, um, in business and life, like we know best practices tell us that we should be doing X. And like we're doing that, but you're missing like the light bulb wow moment and where that report can really turn into actionable impact for you by understanding, okay, because I'm an INTJ,
Mm-hmm.
that's my personality. I'm going to be predisposed to not speaking up in the company of all of these other personality types, which actually just so happen to be all of the people that I work every day with. So, like, that's going to be a problem. So, like, it's not the fact that this is my personality type. It's like, how do you internalize that and also share that with people that you spend a lot of time with so that you can improve your communication to them? Because I have a saying, if you will, it's really difficult to over communicate. And I think that you cannot, sometimes it requires you to say the same thing two or three different ways because everybody learns and their brains process information at different bandwidths. So sometimes rephrasing that or asking that clarifying question to make sure that somebody is fully understanding what you're saying is going to take that minute. So it saves you hours on the back end having to backtrack because you thought you were on the same page when actually you're zigging and zagging and working in opposite directions.
Yeah. And I like that you said if you're able to understand how to process that information, because that I think will really resonate with a lot of people, at least resonated with me, is there is so much information out there. There's so much noise. When personality tests, taking that as an example, there are so many different kinds. How do you know which one to do? How do you know if it's legit? How do you even determine what the results mean? How do you live that out? Like there is just so much noise in general in business. Whenever you are an entrepreneur, whenever you are working with these businesses, whenever you are a owner, whatever the case is, how do you stay focused on the stuff that matters? Because there's proven tactics, I'm sure, for things that actually matter, and it is so easy to get derailed and say, oh, but this thing really seems like it needs me and it's pulling you in a direction that could actually lead you down a wrong path. So I guess it's a very loaded question, but what are the things that actually matter to stay focused on?
Think that's all relative to the person and the situation. And I'm not aware of a magic formula, plug and chug, and add a few of these sort of variables, and it tells you like, Lauren, if you
Dang.
do X, Y, and Z with 95% certainty, like this is the outcome that you can expect there. I think to your point, like because we're at a point where like information has never been easier to access and leverage, that can be very overwhelming to so many people. We always and I still to this day operate under like what are the three mission critical key performance indicators that like I need to be making positive progress towards in 90-day sprints. So like yes, everything feels important, but what actually is important? And like going back to list making and kind of the systems that we were using to kind of prioritize our time, I know what those three are. I'm doing regular weekly and monthly check ins to see how I'm progressing, where my roadblocks are, where I'm stuck to that. But if I'm spending 90% of my time on a particular day, week on doing something that's not helping me move the needle on one of those three, like that's getting pushed to the back burner. And I think with that, you have to figure out what's relevant and what's irrelevant in the context of whatever the task is at hand. So, like, just because there are more AI agents and LLMs and all of these things out there, that doesn't mean that you need to or should be using all of them in your daily workflows. And especially if you're not, and if that is secondary and not the primary sort of goal of your company there. So I think that getting comfortable saying no, or this is really cool, but like we're not going to change our tech stack or roll this out across the company or with clients there, but finding some way to catalog that, whether that's journaling, whether that's something.
Well, hello and welcome back. I am trying to figure out what happened to Hunter. He is disappeared, but I believe he will come back. So stay tuned. You're back.
Hey, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. But you could be spending all your time just completely updating and changing the technologies, the apps that you're using, and actually not making any headway on actually your business. So I think that you need to block out time for continuing sort of education, research and development, however you want to frame that, so that you're staying cutting edge, but once again, understand the relationship and harmony between that. For some businesses, it's like that should just be like extra time outside of your core working hours. And for other more tech centric companies, like, yes, you probably do need to be more up to speed and cognizant of what's going on within your landscape.
So essentially, what you're saying is you have three core things that you are focused on, and there's some other things that could be added in there, but three main things that you're focused on for the next 90 days.
Yep, that's what I operate under, and I just finished reading Andreessen Horitz's book. I was trying to find it on my bookshelf, and one of the things that I've started to do as well is as hold expectations for myself.
Mhm.
So that's more on like a personal level, if you will, of like, all right, I expect myself to reach out to 15 people every single day, or like I expect. So that can be a KPI, but I think that
Yeah.
I'm gonna bucket those and call that out, that that's more of just like myself as a human in person, what I'm holding myself to. That can be working out, because I know if I get a workout in, I'm going to be more productive, I'm going to feel better, etc. There, and that typically I've seen a positive correlation and relationship when I do that. I'm, coincidentally or not, making positive progress on the business KPIs that I set out and created for myself as well.
What are your three right now? Can you share?
Um, I want to get three new clients in the next 90 days. I have not done a good job of like proactive cold outreach.
Mm.
So figuring out that, and then for me, tightening up like my value prop. Like it's one of those things where I know that I can't be super broad and have this broad stroke, but to be honest, like early days, just like with any business, like it sounds bad, but not following the money, but like if you have somebody in line that like knows the work that you do, etc., and they want to engage you as a client, like you're not going to say no. You're going to be like, absolutely, like I can do that. So I think it's just the stage of where I'm at to figure out, like, man, I do X, Y, and Z super, super well for this particular client. So narrowing down like my ideal customer and
Mhm.
then how I'm helping them is something that I need to tighten up to make it easier to be able to go out and find and narrow the pool of potential people that I might be able to help.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to come back to what you said earlier because it keeps, I need a pen and a paper so that I can write it down and just have it out here. But one thing that you said some ideas are meant to just stay on paper. And I want to talk about that. So, what do you do when you run into somebody that has this business idea that you're maybe not, maybe should stay on paper? How are you advising them? Are you advising them?
Yeah, so I think that obviously there's not necessarily, there are many right ways to go about it, and there are also many wrong ways to go about it. Kind of the methodology that I am a proponent and advocate on is positive reinforcement and like providing that coach them up. So not just saying, which I would never say, like, your idea is terrible, but like actually teaching them the process of like customer discovery and doing and going through design thinking and formulating questions and like going out and talking to people and creating
Mhm.
business plans and things like that. I'm sure many people thought that Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos, their ideas were terrible as well. So like
Yeah.
it's almost like a catch 22. If
Yep.
everybody's saying it's a great idea, you're probably asking your friends and family and nobody wants to tell you that like your child's ugly sort of
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah.
you're not getting clean unbiased feedback, and like by definition the most disruptive companies are the ones that like nobody thought it was either way too early or nobody would do that, and like many people were wrong there. So I think that you need, just like with anything, for that founder to take ownership of the viability and validity of that idea. But something that I've seen all too often is, which is super normal now, you have an entrepreneur that has a full-time job that's taking care of multiple children and aging parents or grandparents, but they still have this idea in their back pocket, spending 10, 15 hours a week on that idea. And depending on what that idea is, like, that's great that they're sacrificing it and prioritizing that time, but the reality is, more likely than not, even with AI, you're not going to be able to make the progress that you need
Yeah.
to at the velocity needed to really ever move the needle significantly on that idea. Or perhaps it's, you can watch a show on Shark Tank, and sometimes, like, man, great idea. Like, I was watching an episode recently, and it was a fan, it was a portable fan that you put up on the countertop where if you were cutting onions, you turn the fan on and it was supposed to prevent your eyes from crying because of the onion or shallot, etc. There. The use
Right.
case or how it was marketed at the time was just for that single, like when you're cutting onions there. So
Yeah.
that market is super, super, super small. So because the market's so small, like it's more than likely not going to be economically viable for you to really pursue that through much further than you've taken it there. So I think understanding that, I think many first time entrepreneurs, you don't know what you don't know. And there's a lot of information out there. Not all information is created equal. And sometimes people have selective hearing and only hear what they want to hear and
Mhm.
forget some of the negative feedback or the work, and they just operate under this perception of, I know I have a great idea. I'm going to go as a non technical founder, outsource and hire somebody to build me this cool, shiny app because, you know, I'm always right, have this good feeling about it. And they do it, they launch, and they wonder why they don't have any customers. And like at that point, it always breaks my heart because there's so many resources available that could have helped them perhaps avoid being in a situation where they're now 10, 25, $100,000 in the hole that they've invested in this app, where there's very little viability in the marketplace for what they have built there. So it's always tough. I think that to answer your question, like more directly, leading with empathy and the fact that we're
Mhm.
humans and people before we're entrepreneurs, is always great. And I think that people have spent a lot of effort and time, oftentimes, on their ideas, and that there is a way to deliver, because also the likelihood of the first idea or entrepreneurial endeavor that you have sort of being the one and being able to realize all of your wildest aspirations in life is incredibly small.
Mhm.
It's idea 10, 15, 20 on average that is actually the one that has the staying power. So it's important to think of it like a journey. It's going to be a roller coaster, but the sooner that you can invalidate an idea, that then frees up your time and limited resources to focus on going to idea two, three, four, and hopefully, because you're learning more skills along the way, connecting and finding more communities and mentors, you're able to, what maybe took you a year the first time, be able to make a no go or go decision in a matter of hours or days there. So you're saving time and money from going all in on an idea, maxing out credit cards, taking out second mortgages on your home for something that perhaps, the likelihood or probability of a successful outcome is very, very, very small.
Yeah. And that I like that you were kind of blunt with your answer because I think it's the harsh reality that sometimes people just need to hear that. Sometimes you just need that person that's going to be like, "Hey, let's talk this through. Let's really figure out this idea or let's figure out the next steps. Is it logical? Is this a good idea for this marketplace? Maybe you should move it here." And there's so much of that I just think people don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And that's it it sucks as somebody that has a business, and there's sometimes where it's like I would love feedback, and I'm sure others would too. I mean, you want to make sure time and place, right? But if you could have real opinions from the marketplace that you're selling to, you could move things a lot forward a lot better than if you didn't. So
And it's not just a no. I'm sure, just like in your business, like you don't say yes to every client, and
yeah.
it's an opportunity to educate them when it's a no. It's like, for
Hmm.
these reasons, this is
Hmm.
why it's not a good fit. However, these are two or three referrals from people that I
Yeah.
know that would be much more equipped to be able to help you with where you're at this moment in time. So I never try to leave anybody empty handed.
Hmm.
Even if I can't help them, it's like, man, these are resources, communities, people that I know, would love the opportunity to have, the chance to help you in this idea, or also get a second opinion, if you
Yeah.
will. Oftentimes you don't listen to the first time if you go into the doctor's office and it's like, oh, you need like all these surgeries, like,
Yeah.
whoa, like I feel
Hmm.
healthy here. The challenge is you talk to 100 people, you're going to get 100 varying thoughts. It's like, what's relevant, what's not, what's going to kind of put you and make you go down a rabbit hole and a dead end, and what's actually constructive, positive information that you can take to use, and kind of your entrepreneurial journey, whether it's the current name of your startup, that, or something that may help you 10, 15, 20 years later. Hopefully, you're continuing to surround yourself with people that you want to be a part of that are helping you. And I think there are many communities in Hampton Roads and virtually now, where there's some just really good people that have varying talents that just want to help, without any expectation of anything in return.
Yeah, because that's what fulfills them. There's some people that are fulfilled by helping others, so that makes perfect sense. I think that is just whenever you find a community of people that you can surround yourself by that will uplift you. It sounds so cheesy, and it's just people just gloss over it, but it is the absolute truth. If you are hanging around people that are just there's nothing wrong with it, but let's say they're still in college and they're working towards a degree, yet you are 5 years into your company. There's different goals there, and so with different goals becomes different challenges, and it's really easy to not be able to look at your things with a perspective that you like, an advanced perspective, if you will. Not This doesn't sound the most polished, but you get what I'm saying. You definitely want to have a good community of people. So
It takes a village.
what resources would you recommend people Google, because not everybody's in the Cova, Virginia area? What could somebody look up that would help them if they are in this rut where they're not really sure of who to reach out to?
Absolutely. In many regions all across the country and world now, there are many very specific and also very broad kind of entrepreneurial support organizations and even national networks or chapters, from everything from people that are looking to get into no code, low code, UX, UI design, or actually need more technical support and help when it comes to early stage business formation, access to capital options, etc. There. So even just a quick search, and oftentimes I struggle with even like what to type in, but even just
Mhm.
business support for early stage entrepreneurs or access to capital options, and you're going to get obviously a good list of vetted resources for where you live specifically. I think oftentimes now there's so many options that it's almost like what I've observed is entrepreneurs think of it like a contest of like, I want to be in as many of these all at one time. And just like with
Yeah.
anything, if you try to say yes to everything and stretch yourself so thin, you're not really doing yourself any favors or the organization that you're being a part of their program or engaging with. So, my kind of unsolicited advice would be to pick one or
Mhm.
to try a lot of them, but to pick one initially that you feel speaks most to your heart or can help you address and tackle your most near term pressing challenges, and go all in on that one instead of trying to manage and be a part of multiple programs or groups at once. That can work in my experience. It typically confuses you because you're getting conflicting information from your mentors or program managers, etc. And that's great. And like I think we all can always learn something. But if you're spending more than half of your time doing homework and going to classes and programming, the opportunity cost that you could be spending on your business
Mm.
is pretty substantial for an early stage, recently formed company or a company that's at a critical inflection point that is scaling. So in Hampton Roads, we have tons from Black Brand to Bloom Co-working to Mustard Seed Place to the Hive to Score, which is a national group that provides completely free mentorship. The Hampton Roads Chamber has the Small Business Development Center, which is a program there which helps any small business owner completely free of charge. So there's so many resources, and that's not even getting into co-working and other options where you can be working under the same roof with like-minded individuals and people there from that networking and relationship building piece. So I think like with anything, like I have a bias for people that just show up and roll up their sleeves and actually lean in instead of people that are talking or maybe sitting on the sidelines and kind of just going through the motions
Mhm.
there. And also, if you don't think it's going to help you, like don't do it just because these programs are available. And many of them come with very little barriers of entry and minimal asks on behalf of the small business or small business owner, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be doing it. So always ask yourself, like, how is this going to help me? And that's when, if you don't know what you're working towards, you don't have anything to compare and contrast or a filter to run it through. Because, like, yeah, it feels great to be SWAM certified, but like, is that the best thing for your business at this stage in time. Or if you're a business to business company, and you just spent 25 hours getting coached up on TikTok and doing things there, like, is that the best social platform for you to be on with the audiences that you're trying to get in front of?
That's a really good point, and I like that you said it's not just really blanketed advice for startups. This is for businesses that are trying to scale, trying to grow to some capacity. It's not just for entrepreneurs. This is for management. This is for everybody. This is very good advice because it is so easy. The other day, I have 2 out of 3 LinkedIn certifications that LinkedIn offers for different like onesie twosie things on their platform. And the other day, I was like, oh, that'd be good. And it'd take me 20 minutes to take the test, whatever. But then you have to go through and then you got to do all the practice tests and everything. So the time commitment there would probably be about a day's worth of work to get that extra certification. And it's just one of those things. It's like, oh, yeah, I got to do that. But then you really sit back and you're like, do I need to do this? Is this something that's going to move me forward with what my goals are, what we're launching, what we're trying to do? And not really. I have the certifications that I need. There's no need to go get that third one. But it's simple things like that. But if you do enough of them, then that's where things get convoluted, like you're talking about earlier. And you're pulled in so many different directions. Just pick your 3. And if it's not in that line with your 3, put it on a list for possibly to do in the future and reevaluate if you still want it.
And it's difficult early days because you need that social proof and like try to
Yeah.
establish that credibility. So like those certifications definitely are a way that are universally recognized that like you are knowledgeable in that space. But now you have a track record and clients and stories that you can actually speak to the fact that your stuff on LinkedIn. And to your point, you might not necessarily need a certification that communicates much the same.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that is, but it's just so easy. It's so easy to fall down into that rabbit hole. And gosh, I have to come back to this because you said it earlier that you are a recovering entrepreneur. And so I know that because you said that you're speaking from experience in some areas, but what happened with that? What do you mean by recovering entrepreneur?
So I think that like once you have the entrepreneurial bug, I'm not aware of like a cure to that. I think there are
Mhm.
periods in your life where that stays more dormant than
Mhm.
others, and there are times where that's much more front facing. So I think that for any entrepreneur, you can hopefully probably appreciate this. You do and have a business, you're a part of that. Awesome. It's very much a lifestyle and is full of lots of highs, lots of lows, and everything in between there. So I wore the entrepreneurial hat in my younger years for a period of time and realized that that was not necessarily the direction that I wanted to go and intentionally did not want to be an entrepreneur for a long period of time and was very fortunate to be able to help and work with lots and lots of entrepreneurs. So I was able to get that fix without necessarily having to deal with some of the other less desirable aspects and parts of that. So I think with that, I think whether you define success as making a lot of money, touching a lot of people, making one client happy, that's relative. I think
Mhm.
people naturally go more towards, well, in order to be successful, you have to make a lot of money or get acquired, etc. And like I would push back pretty hard on that. I think that there are many different ways that you can be successful and like you define that. So recovery meaning that I was not ready to rip the band-aid off, if you will, and like wear that hat and title until just recently. And I think with that, as with anything that people go through in life, it brings some things that perhaps were you had compartmentalized that were
Mhm.
sort of way in your brain back to the front. You just have to, be real with yourself, and that sometimes that is going to unpack some scars and feelings and thoughts that perhaps you're not happy with or did not make you feel warm and fuzzy. And I think that that's fine. And that's also just the reality that like not every entrepreneurial journey is going to be successful, have a positive outcome, or go on for eternity. And that is expected and completely fine. So that's why, like, anytime any entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur actually acts on that urge, humongous milestone that needs to be celebrated, because there's so many people, I'm sure, at every social event like, man, I've had this idea for 20 years, but like I haven't done anything with it. And it's like sometimes that window is so small. So all credit to all the entrepreneurs out there that are actually doing it, that are being vulnerable, that are putting themselves out there with lots of uncertainty, that aren't afraid to admit when things maybe did not end up the way they wanted to, but that is not stopping them from giving it another try.
Was it fear that made you not exactly wanna take that leap, or why you said recovering entrepreneur?
I think that entrepreneurship can get all too consuming, and it's
Mhm.
not healthy to not have work-life harmony, and for that to be the only thing that
Yep,
you do.
yep,
And I think that it takes courageous people that care enough about you to sort of check you and say that this
yeah,
is not healthy. Quick, like, reflex, or a sort of quick flashback, like you've worked over 4,000 hours for 2 consecutive years. Like, that's not sustainable. That's
mhm,
not perhaps the best way to start a family, etc. So like, okay, heard. And then also just like, you're in this young person's body but you feel much older than that. And so I think that that just wrong place, wrong time sort of thing, or
yeah,
just that wasn't for me. And that's okay. It's just like people leave jobs all the time. It's
yeah,
perhaps more, it's slightly different when an entrepreneur decides to step away, or an owner in a business, but that doesn't make them a bad person. That doesn't mean that the company that they're leaving will be any less successful. I think everybody needs to be replaceable, and I
mhm,
think that it's your goal as sort of the number one of any small business to create systems, to
yep,
challenge yourself, to surround your people that augment your skill sets, and be transparently communicative to a fault that like the goal is to offload all of this, so that, or whatever that is, but like that if something happened to me tomorrow, the business would go on. And like if I
yeah,
choose to step away, that's not a reflection of the business or anything. That's just like, I nobody's going to advocate for what's in the best interest of you more so than you. And
yep,
like getting comfortable speaking up for yourself and just realizing and having those boundaries where like this is not healthy, or ultimately in my case like I'm not happy, and like you
mhm,
can't put a price or necessarily empirically quantify what that means. So
yep.
like because of that, I'm going to try something different, and that doesn't mean that I can't go back to that at some point in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you gotta make sure that you are prioritizing yourself, and so many people don't whenever things are you're in seasons, and sometimes those seasons last way longer than you anticipated, and you really just gotta figure out, okay, what am I gonna do differently to prioritize my mental health? Because that is something that we are just now, as I think a business society, starting to talk about a little bit more, but it really should be something that, as an entrepreneur and as a manager of any kind, you have to prioritize because your work will suffer otherwise. So I'm happy for you that you were able to identify that at the time and have the experience that you got, because everything happens for a reason, in my opinion. I'm very a firm believer in that. So I think that there's a reason that you had your journey with 757 and now you're doing what you're doing because it's the right place, right time now.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, Hunter, it has been so phenomenal getting to talk to you about everything startup. I hope that some people were able to take some actionable stuff from what you said about really moving the needle forward, because you gave a lot of real techniques and real advice that you just might not hear otherwise. You can't really get this watching YouTube videos. People are going to be more polished. So I really like that you gave some raw advice, and hopefully people can take something away from that.
Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Absolutely. So, where can people find you if they are looking for your expertise? Where can they reach out to you?
Since we're live on LinkedIn now, I think it's only fitting to look me up on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. Love to connect with anybody for any reason, and just meeting really good people. So that's probably the easiest way there, and look forward to connecting or re-engaging with many of y'all, and appreciate that you guys were able to tune in and spend the first part of your Monday morning listening to Lauren and I.
I know. It's always a joke that I have at the beginning of towards the end of the live. I say, "And have a good," and then I have to look it up and figure out what day it is. But today I know it's Monday. That's easy to remember. So, everybody, I hope you have a wonderful Monday. As always, I'm happy to connect you to any of the guests that we have here on the show. So, if you do want to get connected to Hunter, feel free to shoot me a message as well. DM him first. But if you want a connection from me, I'm happy to introduce you to Hunter as well. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and thank you for coming on the show, Hunter. It's been awesome.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate it.
All right. See everybody on LinkedIn next Thursday. Until next time. Bye guys.